Goodness gracious alive. All right. Maybe Steve Holland did it. Good morning, Steve. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Paul Gallo. Good morning, Mississippi.
I had a great song here. As a matter of fact, if Lance will allow me, I will put it in the closing. Could we do that, Lance?
You do whatever. You're the chief.
But for some reason, it's just giving me a problem here, and I'm getting a little aggravated, and I can't do two things at one time. But I'll get her taken.
That's got a little bit to do with miles. Oh,
got to do with what?
Miles.
You mean miles on the brain?
Yes, and your body.
I know. I know exactly what you're talking about because they all end up at your place one way or the other.
Amen, brother.
All right, let's do this. Let's talk about the session, the 2024 session, and your analysis of that because it was an interesting session.
Well, you know, if I told you I don't know much about the session, I would not be lying because I'm no longer there, and I just read a little bit and listen to you occasionally and try to figure out what's going on. It didn't seem like a very spectacular session to me, quite frankly. My two big issues, of course, was Medicaid expansion and PERS, and I followed them very closely. And I guess the outcome on PERS was okay. The outcome on Medicaid expansion was a total freaking disaster. So, you know, if you asked me to rate the session, it was probably about a C. I'm seeing a trend develop. My friend Delbert Hoseman did not seem to have any control over the Senate this time, in my opinion, and the Speaker in the House, Jason White, my dear friend, whom I told the first day I met him, you're destined to be Speaker of this body. You know, he seemed to be emerging as the new leader in Mississippi, but it's really interesting to me, Paul. I mean, you know where I served, to the middle, to the left always, and always brought things back to where I thought they ought to be in the middle. It don't seem like we got any people like that down there now. And it's not going to work very long when it's like that. I reflect back to Tim Ford, who was just a phenomenal speaker, served 16 years. He always, for example, put a Republican on conference committees just to have the other side. We were in charge then, the Democrats, just to have some balance in it. And I didn't see that happen much at all this year. I regret that. But all in all, it may have been a C session. I don't know about the little stuff, but I think the public, the state employees, to a large degree, won on PERS. I don't have any problem expanding the board, but taking over and taking all the elected people off was just ludicrous, in my opinion. On Medicaid expansion, I mean, Missy McGee provided some great leadership on the House side, and I thought that Senator Blackwell's work requirement mandate, which historically, you know, I did Medicaid about 28 years in the legislature. That option started surfacing probably 16 years ago, and there were several efforts made, and CMS never would pass any of that. They just flat refused to pass any work ethic because Medicaid is not a social program. It's an insurance program based on the federal poverty level. Those that don't have, that cannot afford private insurance or do not have it through their employer. So it just seems to me that there was belligerence on the Senate side and storm raid up San Juan Hill with work ethic or nothing.
Right. But Steve, wait a minute. You're a hardworking Mississippian. And CMS has the right to put a work requirement in if they want to. They don't have to contribute. I understand it's a social program. It's going to be a social program with or without the discretionary.
You're wrong about that. It's an insurance program. Medicaid is
it's an insurance social program. Well, anytime you take money from somebody and give it to somebody else who doesn't have to pay, it's a social program.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, if you're getting. If you're required to
aren't you on Medicare?
Yes.
then that's a social program. If you
well, I don't have it. Well, I shouldn't say that I've got the regular insurance from the company.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I understand it's a social program. Yeah, but we're not deciding who should, who should not be on there. I'm just saying that, and I'm still working, by the way. So that's a bad example on your part.
1115 waivers are possible, and Mississippi really led the way on some 1115 waivers back in the 90s with traumatic brain injury, independent living waivers, assisted living waivers, which has been a big help financially, not only to the state but to families. So, yeah, it's possible, but I don't think under this administration many have been granted.
Let me ask you this: you've seen a couple of speakers. You've seen a couple of speakers come through. Is it a part where the Senate leader, whomever it happens to be at that particular time, like to test a new speaker? Does some of that happen and see how far they can go and feel them out?
There's always grandstanding in the legislature, always will be, but I don't know. It should not. It should be less now than ever.
You would think.
Because the supermajority has everything. Yeah. Probably Medicaid expansion is the only thing I know of that's come along in a long time where the supermajority had to have the minority to pass it. And they sort of thumb their nose at the minority, and this is what we get. It's not, it's not that everything is Republican down there now. Why don't the Republicans have a prayer meeting or revival and decide what the hell it is that they really want?
Well, I understand that, but you got Republicans. Well, you got Republicans out there griping about they're not Republican enough. There's rhinos in there every time they do that. So you're never going to. You think you guys pleased everybody as Democrats? No, that's why you don't have any Democrats left.
No, indeed. But I can tell you one thing, and it's a fact. It's not Steve Holland blowing smoke. In my years of handling public health, 5 of my 7 subcommittee chairmen were always Republican, and we never, ever lost a bill that came from our committee on the floor of the House. Not ever, not one.
You were vicious.
There is a model out there where you can work together, and you can compromise, but you got to talk, you got to be open, and you've got to be honest and transparent. And I don't know. I've been out 5 years now. 5 years is a long time, especially when it's our age.
You were definitely honest, and I said you were vicious. That's an understatement. And have you apologized to anybody you raked over the coal, like Doc Robertson?
But Doc crossed on over into glory, and
I do.
I did. Tell him one time that I got a little out of hand. I can't say that I gave an honest apology. But,
a little out of hand? You berated that guy. We have the audio. I wouldn't even play it right now. I mean, just.
Yeah, I wish you wouldn't. But you put it in the archives. It might be fun when I cross over to play it.
Oh, it definitely is in the archives. I got to ask you, when you came in, who were some of the people that were your mentors in the House?
When I came to the legislature?
Yeah.
Well, we had a class in 1983 that was, I think our average age was 29. A bunch of young Turks that had a pretty solid educational background by that time, and we had fire. We were a little miffed about the direction. Not a little miffed. We were a hell of a lot miffed about the direction that the state was not going, that we thought we should be going at that particular time in its life, and so we came in and sort of gave Buddy Newman 4 more years, but gave him hell in the process, and then forced his retirement. It was an age of enlightenment, I like to think of.
Hey, hold on right here, because we got a bumper that's going to start. I'm going to talk to you more about that. That song, I think I found it. It's coming up. We'll play this for the out. Steve Holland and more coming up next. Turn it up some.
Hell no, I hadn't talked to George. I don't even care about talking to George during the week much. But on the weekend, no, I've not talked to George, my good friend. If he wants to talk to me, he can call me, but I'm not going to call him. He's made his point, whatever that is.
Ladies and gentlemen, back in a moment with the Tupelo Flash. Hang on.
sing like a bird. I play licks on my guitar like you ain't never heard. But I'm down on my luck.
All righty, let me get back with Steve Holland. Limited time here. We were talking about the old days when you first came in and some of your memories about some of those mentors and people that gave you good advice.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that subject back up because I didn't finish it. The very people that I sought to oust became my mentors, people like Jim Simpson, Squirrel Phillips, even to a degree, Buddy Newman, because I learned a lot from these guys that I didn't want to do, but I also learned the tactics, the skills of getting things done in the legislature. Now, the best way to get things done in the legislature is to have a supermajority. Makes it a hell of a lot easier, but it don't make it democratic always. And I think that's where we are today. I mean, now we've got a civil war going on with the Republicans. Oh, and by the way, you'll be proud to know this. I don't think we've talked since then, but I voted in the Republican primary in the senatorial race. How about that? Are you about dead?
Well, I'm just going to let me take a couple of pills here. But that said, in all seriousness, if you found yourself back in the House now, especially during this 2024 session, I mean, you're politically, ideology-wise, you're even further. I understand you left the Democrat Party, went to an independent, but you're even further away because, I mean, you have the Democrat caucus saying, no, we don't want this bill, this Medicaid expansion, because we want it all. We don't want a work requirement, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have the House pressing against the Senate on some different issues, and it almost felt like the House was more Tim Ford than ever before. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, just there was.
I couldn't agree more, Paul, and that's what Jason White is, I think, and that's what his future very well could be. Is a Tim Ford style leader who brought all parties to the table, and I wish him the best. I've always had a lot of respect for Jason. He's a smart guy, and I just I don't know. It may have been a God-given gift, but I always recognize talent. That's one reason 5 of my 7 subcommittee chairmen for 8 years with Billy McCoy raising uncharted hell with me every day for doing that were Republicans because they were smart. They were engaged. They were excited about the responsibilities that they had been assigned. Now it's more like little tin soldiers, and the top 3 are telling everybody else what to do, and they just fall in line, and that's just not. Well, I'll tell you. You asked me what the legislature would be like if I was still down there. There'd be a hell of a lot more dialogue than what it is now, because I would force it, because that is the only way to successfully and positively put legislation on the books that helps the masses.
I think your memory is waning a little bit as far as dictatorship, because nobody could have been more of a dictator than Billy McCoy. God bless him. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Even to the point of, I'm sure he had some conversations with you and the aforementioned George, which was George Flaggs, now the mayor of Vicksburg. But I'm sure he had some conversations with you when all of a sudden he turned on the radio and you happened to be on the Gallo show. You probably got reprimanded. George did, and many others did.
Totally reprimanded. He told me not to get back on there again, and I said, "Now, Mr. Speaker, let me remind you once again, I got awesome respect for you. I've sat with you 28 years, and I love you like a brother."
Yeah.
But now the people of Lee County elected me, and the people of Lee County take me out, and by God, they did. So that's just the way the process works. And I never let him get to me. Now, I loved him, but I think in his last 4 years, he took it too far to one
I agree.
side.
Yeah.
But I love him still.
Let me ask you this: Do you think Delbert Holzman, and he's mentioned that he wants to run for governor, has hurt himself or helped himself in this past session?
Well, Delbert's a great friend of mine. His office, when he was Secretary of State, was across from me, and we fellowshiped nearly every day in the Capitol when I was down there, and he's just an awesome friend, and I'm really crazy about him. But, I remember when he ran 5 years ago for lieutenant governor, and we had in-depth conversations about Medicaid expansion. And he was going to do this and do that, and he kept waiting to next year, waiting to next year, waiting to next year. Sounded like a Mississippi State graduate. And then things come up this year when the House, who has typically opposed it under the former Speaker Gunn at all cost, comes up and says, this is what we're going to do, and then he couldn't.
You got 10 seconds that's going to cut us off. You want? I wish we had more time. We got to do this an hour one
Call
day.
me sometime, Paul.
We'll do it,
I
man.
mean, I bear about $550 a year at the funeral home, but I've always got time to talk to Mississippi. And
you got it.
And by
Thank
the
you,
way,
man.
thank you for bringing me around a little bit. I hated you at first, but I really like you now.
Well, that's just because you got smarter as you got older. Thank you, sir.